In the world of wrestling right now, WWE is the top dog, but for a long time they struggled to have three brands of value. They have had Raw and SmackDown for some time, but a third brand under their banner never seemed to work out, until the arrival of the true NXT came around. Since its birth, it made many wrestlers' careers, and now has the greatest moments in wrestling. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Number 10. The Birth of NXT and the NXT TakeOver. I know it may seem odd that the Birth of NXT would be one of its best moments, but you have to understand what this meant for WWE as a whole. Those who know the history of NXT knows that it was actually born as a competition show for about 10 young superstars, and they had to compete in various dumb challenges in order to earn favor and thus not be voted off. It worked for 2 seasons, but it wasn't resonating with fans. So then, they buckled down and rebranded to be a true third brand. One that would have men and women's divisions, a tag team division, and more. They focused on the wrestling and connecting with the fans at Full Sail University, where it was usually held. Then, when they had their first PPV show via TakeOver, they helped cement themselves as a brand to watch. And with each subsequent TakeOver, they've tried to raise the bar even higher, take the matches to extraordinary lengths, and so on and so forth. Without these two things, NXT wouldn't be what it is today, a much bigger brand, with a much bigger audience. Number 9. The live show on USA. When it comes right down to it, NXT had to do a lot to prove that it was going to be a big thing, and slowly but surely over time they did just that. They showed that they were serious, and that they could go toe-to-toe with Raw and SmackDown, and that they deserved all the attention that they were getting. And then in 2019, a major moment for the brand came. They were going to be getting a live show on USA. This was important because at the time, WWE hosted all Raw and SmackDown on USA, so this would have given them 3 shows on the network. Eventually, SmackDown moved to Fox, but that didn't weaken the impact of NXT, which got over 1 million viewers in its first few weeks. While that number has cooled down, thanks largely to a rival wrestling show, NXT is still prominently a part of Wrestling Wednesdays. Number 8. The victories at Survivor Series. When it comes to sustaining momentum, it's important to make something feel important in the grand scheme of things. NXT was at one time considered the developmental brand of WWE, and rightfully so. But after a bunch of takeovers that far eclipsed the WWE PPVs, it was clear that NXT was on equal footing. In 2019, NXT took not just the next step in viewership via being on USA, they took their talents to the main roster and challenged Raw and SmackDown at Survivor Series. And not only did they challenge them, they got more wins than the other brands. This was important for a single reason. WWE could have easily buried them to show that they were the upstarts and not the standard bearers. Instead, they brought the house down and showed that NXT was for real. Number 7. The arrival of Shinsuke Nakamura. One of the biggest hallmarks of NXT by far was when they, over the course of many years, had big-name arrivals that helped change the game. Finn Balor, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Shayna Baszler, and more come to mind, but you could argue that none of them mattered in terms of impact as Shinsuke Nakamura. When he made a surprise debut via video package at 1 NXT, the crowd erupted. This was one of the biggest stars in the history of New Japan Pro Wrestling, a man known for doing 5-star matches all the time and being the king of strong style. Getting him in NXT was huge. And sure enough, his very first match at NXT TakeOver San Antonio was a 5-star classic against Sami Zayn. The crowd loved the match so much they chanted, "Fight forever." Nakamura would go on to be a 2-times NXT champ, and many wish he would return to NXT after his treatment in WWE. Number 6. Birth of Demon Finn Balor. Finn Balor was another major get for NXT. His time in Japan as Prince Devitt was legendary, and he brought a lot of fire and intensity to NXT as a whole. But when it came time for his first TakeOver match, he made sure that his opponents, the Ascension, would see something you've never seen before. His entrance came, the lights went down, the heartbeat sound effects arose, and from the depths of smoke came out Demon Finn Balor. A darker version of Finn that was covered in body paint and a headdress that made him look very frightening indeed. The crowd was enthralled, and throughout his NXT career he would do variations of this entrance for big-time matches, including being a demon dragon, dressing like Jack the Ripper, and more. Number 5. The Tommaso Ciampa heel turn. The story of Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano are very much intertwined in NXT. They came into the brand together as a tag team, and after a lot of hard work and dedication, became the NXT Tag Team Champions as a team known as DIY. Then, in NXT TakeOver Chicago, everything changed. After losing the titles to the Authors of Pain, Ciampa and Gargano were heartbroken. But then Ciampa turned that into rage and threw Gargano into the stage entrance. Then he continually beat him up, put him through a table, and more. This was the beginning of a long road for Ciampa, one that would turn him into the Blackheart Tommaso Ciampa, one of the most feared heels in NXT history. His rivalry with Gargano that came from this moment is legendary, and in fact, it continues to this day. Number 4. Asuka. Without a doubt in anyone's minds, one of the biggest things in NXT that made it important was the women's division. The 4 horsewomen were born there, and many other stars have come from there too. But in terms of one of the biggest moments, it's actually a series of them, and all of them have Asuka. Asuka came from Japan, formerly known as Asura, and was brought in to be a big heavy hitter. Admittedly, her initial arrival fell a bit flat with fans. It was weird, trust me, but when it came down to her being in the ring and making her NXT TakeOver debut, she was a force of nature. Her theme song, her attire, her fighting style, it captured the hearts and minds of the crowd. Asuka is the most dominant champion in NXT history, both in regards to men and the women. She even left NXT without having been pinned or losing the title. Why? Because no one is ready for Asuka. Number 3. Bayley vs Sasha Banks, NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. As I just noted, the women of NXT were a big reason for its success, and the 4 horsewomen of Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, and Bayley were a big reason for that. But of the 4 of them, Bayley was always the underdog. She had shots at the NXT Women's title, but never won. But then, she went on a crusade to get the title. She beat her rivals in Emma, in Charlotte, and Becky. And then at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn, she fought Sasha Banks in an emotional match that had fans on their feet. Bayley took the belt, and we even got an Iron Man rematch, but the first one is still considered to be the best of the 2 bouts. And when the match was over, the 4 horsewomen reunited in order to celebrate Bayley's victory. Number 2. Johnny Gargano wins the NXT title. You're going to notice that these top 3 moments are all underdog victories, and for good reason. NXT knows how to breed underdog champions, and of the 3, Johnny Gargano's is the most recent. Gargano had been on a roller coaster's ride of victories and losses. Though he was putting on 5-star matches with people like Tommaso Ciampa, Ricochet, Andrade, and more, he couldn't get the main title. Then he went and faced Adam Cole in a 2/3 falls match. And it was a classic. Johnny had to beat the odds over and over again. Interferences, dirty moves, and more. But he did it. He won. And the crowd went nuts. Number 1. Sami Zayn wins the NXT title. Before Bayley, before Johnny, there was Sami. Sami was the original NXT underdog, and he went through his NXT career without a single title for the most part. But he kept getting closer and closer, clawing his way to it. Then, finally, he had enough. He wanted one more title match against champion and friend Neville. And he put his career on the line. In a masterclass of wrestling, Sami Zayn did the impossible. He won, and the entire NXT locker room came out to celebrate with him. So there you go, some of the best moments in NXT history. Which of these do you remember watching firsthand? Which of these is your personal favorite? Or do you have others you feel are better? Let me know in the comments below, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time on the channel.